people that are here or who will be listening to this, Gabriel Serrano is an attorney based in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and he has assisted a lot of foreigners, some from our trusted network, to get residency or even citizenship in Argentina. So the point of today's discussion is to explore more of those pathways and answer any questions that you guys might have. Gabriel has given a short presentation at the Buenos Aires event. We thought of doing a run-through of that presentation as well, and then setting out a good foundation, a good basis of that information. Then we can go to a free discussion and a Q&A. All right, so I hope everybody can see the screen that I'm sharing. We can go ahead and have the presentation.
Okay, thank you so much, Denisa, and thank you for having me, and thank you for joining. I'm going to be sharing with you today some insights about how to get residency and ultimately citizenship in Argentina. For those of you that don't know it already, Argentina has a very favorable and convenient pathway to citizenship. It's one of the fastest, because only living in Argentina for 2 years, you can apply for citizenship. So a 2 years time frame is quite short comparing it to other countries in the region, except the golden passport type of frameworks. So Argentina is pretty convenient from that point of view. But the question is always like, okay, I need 2 years in Argentina, but what is the legal status? How can I live for those 2 years in Argentina? And that's why we need to start with residency. And then after the 2 years, we need to think about the citizenship application. But it's very important to do things right during the first 2 years for the residency requirement of the 2 years for the citizenship. So like taking a look at the slide, I mean, we have a little bit of information that is more technical, like which is the Argentine Immigration Act, and that is a progressive and welcoming legislation. In Argentina, if you can show passive income for $1,400, you can apply for a rentista. Rentista in Spanish, renta means income. That's why we call it income-based residency. Like you show the government, I have my own money that I bring from abroad, I have passive income, so authorize me to live in Argentina. First, you get permits that are valid for 1 year, then you renew for another year, and that's when you have the 2 years required for the application for the citizenship. And as I was saying, if you show the Argentine government that you have your own financial means to support yourself in Argentina, you're going to be granted a rentista temporary permit. That comes with the local ID card. The name is DNI. We call it DNI, so you have both. And you can live in the country, come in and out of the country. You can work, you can study. So you have all the same rights as any resident or as an Argentine citizen. Let me check the slide. The reality, what it says there in the slide is that 50% of everything is in the regulation, but the other 50% has to do with administrative practices. And this is a little bit challenging because we have to constantly be updated with what's going on and what the standards are for the agency, because that can change quite often. It's like ever changing. So the work at hand for us as practitioners helping our clients is like 50% of the work. I mean, it's described in the regulation, what we need, what we need to file, the evidence we need to produce. But then the other 50% of certain aspects of the processes have to do with the administration. The administration that is governing at a certain time. I'm going to give you an example. For example, we have a new administration, a new government that started last year in 2024, and we noticed that the immigration agency is paying a lot of attention to origin of funds, for example. And when you show that you have income coming from abroad, last year we received a lot of notices to comply with origin of funds certification. So we had to come back to our clients and tell them to produce this evidence, because with the previous government, we didn't have that type of requests or notices. So things can change from one government to the other, some aspects of the regulations. Here in the slide, we have an explanation that for business travel, you don't need a visa. If you come from one of the OECD countries, there are 36 countries, you can enter Argentina without problems for tourism or for business if you come from one of these countries. So you don't need to worry about any permits or visas if you're entering the country for these purposes, okay? Denisa, can we move to the next slide? Because I'm gonna jump into the temporary residency. So are we okay there? Yeah. So as I explained, if you live in Argentina for 2 years, you can apply for citizenship. But how are we going to live in Argentina for 2 years? That's going to be with temporary residency that is valid for 12 months. That's the slide we have on the screen. And the rentista, that's established in provision 23 of the Immigration Act. That's where it says that a rentista, someone bringing money from abroad, can live in Argentina, is granted an authorization. And typically this is granted for 12 months. You have the right to work. There are no quotas, no labor certification, no labor market test required. There are not even medical exams. We do not have medical exams. So that's important, because some countries you need to pass a medical exam to be able to be eligible for residency. And when you obtain residency, you also obtain the ID card. You do one renewal, and then you have a second year, and then finally you apply for citizenship. Can we move to the next slide? Because I'm going to be talking about the requirements for the rentista. So we have employment-based. We're not going to explore that. But number B, the income-based, 23B, and pensioners, 23C. Those are the most important ones. These are self-petition. You don't need a sponsor. So you show yourself that you have the passive income, and that's enough. What is the typical passive income? Well, if you're receiving a benefit from Canada Pension, Social Security Administration, or your governmental agency for pensions, with a letter from them, that's going to be enough. Then if you own a company, for example, dividends is eligible for the rentista, and typically also rental income. When you're renting out a property abroad, outside Argentina, you can use that income to prove that you're able to sustain yourself in Argentina and be granted a rentista residency. At the moment, the amount, because that's the first question that comes into mind, how much money do I need to make every month to be eligible? The regulation says $1,400 at the moment. We use a best practice standard, and whenever possible, we advise clients to use $2,000. That would be the best practice standard. But in the regulation, it's going to be $1,400, okay? Just to make it clear. And you do need to open a local bank account in Argentina. We can help you with that. It's not that easy, but at the office, we already worked on that, and we help clients opening the bank account. And you need to transfer that money to Argentina. Something that we've been noticing with my case manager, with Lucia, in December and January this year, for example, they are very meticulous and strict with the transfers. They started checking that you did all the transfers for the right amount, and that only started happening last year in December. So that's important to keep that in mind, that you need to transfer that money into your local bank account. They don't care how you spend the money. They don't request you to maintain a balance in the account. You just need to transfer the money. After that, what you do with it, they don't care. Okay, and
so
this is very important.
Transfer them back. So
you
transfer
could
in and transfer out.
You could, yeah. not to transfer it back from the account, because Argentina has currency restrictions to send transfers. That would be complicated, but you can withdraw it, and you can change it back to dollars, send it back through other means, but not through the bank. But yes, the answer is yes. They just want to see the transfer, but they don't control how you spend it, what you spend it in, or if you withdraw it and change it back to dollars and save it, for example. And you don't need to, because there's a lot of concern. I don't want to keep my money in an Argentine bank account. I don't trust the system. So the good news is that you don't need to keep any balance in the account, okay? And the physical presence requirement. That's important. Argentina might not be the best jurisdiction for someone who is 100% remote, someone who cannot invest some time living in Argentina, because you're going to have to live in Argentina 6 months out of 12. I remember I've been practicing since 2001, and until 2010, they were not enforcing physical presence requirement. They only started doing that in 2010. And after that, they check in the entry-exit records of the agency whether you came in or came out through the airport or through land borders. Sometimes they say, "Oh, I have two passports." That doesn't really matter, because the searches are done with dates of births and names. So if you're using two IDs or different passports, that shows anyway it's like a ledger with the entry-exit records, and so that's going to show. So the bottom line is that you need to live in Argentina for 6 months out of 12. Okay, that's the first year, and the second year is the same. And after that, you're going to be eligible for the citizenship application, because you're going to have 2 years living in the country. Also, I would like to explore or explain timelines before I jump into the citizenship. Timelines for the residency. Typically, you need to, for a 2023B or 23C, which is rentista or pensionado, you need to we need you to stay in Buenos Aires for 2 weeks approximately, because we need to complete a lot of tasks. We need to do your Argentine criminal records. We're going to need to go to the immigration agency. We're going to need to go to the Social Security Administration to get a tax ID. We call it in Spanish quill. And with the quill, you're going to be able to open a bank account. We're going to take you to the bank to open the bank account. So there are serial tasks that we need to complete. We cannot initiate the application before you enter the country, and I'll explain you why. So we get a lot of requests, and they say, "I would like to arrive in Argentina the same day that we start visiting the agencies and initiating the procedures." The problem is that to initiate the process, you need to be inside the country, because the system, the platform, is called RADEX, only allow us to initiate the petition when there's an entry transit in your record. You need to show in the system that you passed the inspection at the airport and that you are in Argentina. For that reason, we cannot advance tasks and some of the applications that we need to complete, because we are only able to initiate it once you're inside Argentina. And that's when we start. That's when we start completing the application online and then taking you to the different agencies, okay? Something important is that Argentina has a system of official public translators. These are translators that are granted licenses by the state. So all translations are done in Argentina. Don't waste any money or time making translations abroad. This is important, because many times we receive a package with all the documents and we see the translations, and you will need to pay for them again in Argentina. So try to save that part of the effort. So the timeline is 2 weeks in Buenos Aires for the application. The reality is that after the application, if you need to travel to other parts if you want to start traveling, go to the north, to Mendoza, to Bariloche, or the north to Salta, you can do that. You can travel. After this initial 2 weeks, typically the approvals the agency will adjudicate the case. They will approve the case after 90 days. Right now, there are a little bit of delays, and we are passing the 90 days. And in some cases, we have an extra 30 days approximately. Once the petitions are approved, your file is going to be transferred to another agency. That agency is RENAPER. They're going to issue your ID. Your ID is going to arrive in another extra 30 to 60 days approximately. But the important thing is adjudication. If you got the approval, that's completely fine. Good news is that you can travel during the application. You're able to travel even outside Argentina. The most important thing is that you're going to get a document called Precaria. That's conditional residency. That document is valid for 90 days. You can travel abroad, but the day of the approval, the day of the expiration of the Precaria, you need to be in Argentina. If you're not in Argentina, we cannot renew it. So it's very important that you keep that in mind. We ask clients, do all the travel you need, but please save the date of the expiration of your Precaria, of your conditional residency, because we're going to need you in Argentina on that date. If you're not in Argentina on that date, the agency assumes that you renounced the application, so they will close it. So you need to come back. We make the renewal in a week, and you're going to have another extra 90 days. So that's a little bit. I shared with you how the timeline is working at the moment with the applications. So I think that for temporary residency, that's a good overview about the requirements. Maybe I would like to add how to produce the evidence. So if you own property, let's say you own property in Nevada, in the US, we're going to need number one, the deed. We're going to need to prove that you are the owner of the property. So we need we call it in Spanish the title or the deed. We also need the rental agreement. We need to show that you're entitled to receive rental income from that property. And last, number three, is a bank statement showing how you're getting paid your rent. So with those three pieces of evidence, we have the grounds for a successful case using rental income. I'm going to switch the example to dividends. Let's say you own a company, you own an LLC in Delaware or Wyoming. In this case, what we're going to need are the articles of organization of your company and the certificate of incorporation. All the documents, they need to be apostilled. This is a legalization, in this case, by the Secretary of State, if it's the US. And we're going to need to prove that the company exists and that you are a shareholder or member, if it's an LLC. We will also need an accountant certification, an accountant certifying that you own the company and that you get paid at least $2,000 of dividends on average a month. So let's say you are distributing dividends once a year. That's fine because it's going to be on average $2,000 a month. So you can distribute $24,000 a year, or let's say you do it every 6 months, then it's fine. You can distribute $12,000 every 6 months. That's going to be acceptable, because we always get this question. I'm not withdrawing dividends from my company every month. I do it every. So that's okay. You're not going to have a problem. And we're going to need your bank statement, your personal bank statement, showing how you're receiving the payment of your dividends. So they will want to see that as well. So for, let's say, rental income, you need 3 documents, but for the dividends income, you also need 3 documents, which is the articles of incorporation or certificate of incorporation of the company. You're going to need the accountant's certification and the bank statement. Those are the 3 documents. So I have covered a little bit how to produce the evidence and what are the documents that you're going to need. As you see, it's not that difficult. It's not complicated to gather and produce this evidence. So it's feasible. It's possible. You can get your rentista for your whole year and then to renew it for another year more. We're going to need your background check, your criminal background checks. That's very important. They need to be apostilled. And if you have any arrests, any records, annotations, or convictions, it's important that we have we call it admissibility consultation, because there could be some issues of admissibility for criminal grounds. So maybe you're not eligible. So it's important to make an analysis that is complex, and I'm not going to cover it today because we just have 20 minutes. But I just wanted to to make it clear that if you have annotations, convictions, or any sort of even arrests, we need to make an analysis and prepare an explanation for that for the agency. Okay, so that's an overview of the temporary residency. Denisa, if you can move to the next. Okay, so let's say you arrived to Argentina, you got your rentista, you lived in Argentina for the 2 years. Then after 24 months, we are ready to start the citizenship application. Unlike other countries, in Argentina, citizenship applications are done in court, in the judiciary, and more specifically in the federal level. So your citizenship is approved by a federal judge in the judiciary. It's not an administrative procedure, so that's important. Well, you need to have lived in Argentina. Many of the requirements they replicate from the rentista process. So that's a good thing, because most of the evidence that we produced for the rentista, then we use it again when we're doing the citizenship, when we're working on the citizenship. So you need to show economic means and resources to maintain yourself, that they will probably be the same ones that we showed for the rentista at the immigration agency. At the moment, being honest, we are being affected by delay that is significant. We have like 18 months of delays, because we have tons of nationalities that are making applications. So the courts are backlogged. We do our best. We follow up every single week. We have an attorney that is appointed for citizenships only. So we are very on top of the cases. But even doing that, the system is experiencing delays. At the moment, the Spanish language is not required. It was required until 2021. But not at the moment. And it's important that you know that you will not be required to renounce your citizenship of birth or of origin. Argentina accepts multiple nationalities, multiple citizenships. So if you have 2 or 3 other passports, that's fine. Argentina will not request the renunciation of any of your, because I understand that some countries, they require that, and I think Paraguay requires that. So of course you want more passports and not less. So yes, and for the application, like for the work we do in the ground, we need your physical presence approximately 4 times for the initiation, for criminal background checks, then a court appearance, and then to swear in, because when you get the ruling is passed granting you citizenship, you're going to need to swear in and receive the ruling by the judge. We call it citizenship certificate, and after that we process the passport and the DNI. The DNI takes like 2 weeks, but then the passport is quick, and we have at the airports you're going to find a passport booth where you can process passports even in the same day. So that's a good thing. You don't have long waits, so that's expedited.
So
and I
the
think
18 months. Sorry, so the 18 months processing time of your citizenship currently, it doesn't require you to be there for this whole period. I mean, I guess you still need to be there for 6 months per year, but do you have to be?
This is the question. That's a very good question, and this is the thing. I have this conversation very often with our clients. So in the regulation, it doesn't say if during the application, during the processing, you need to be in Argentina or not. But of course, the expectation of the judges, especially now with so many applicants, and there are many applicants and nationalities that are submitting the applications and returning to their countries, they are trying to differentiate between those that are in Argentina and those that left, to make it a priority for those who stay. So whenever it's possible for the client to continue to live in Argentina for 6 months a year, I recommend it. When the client is able to do that, I say, go for it, do it, because it's going to help. Now, if you can't, we're still getting the approvals, and we are still successful with the applications. But I see in the courts this attitude where they say, is the client here? Where is he? You know, because they are trying to figure out if he's we call it remote applicant, if he's a remote applicant or not. There has been like thousands of Russian nationals that initiated applications, and they're trying to close them. So, and one court made an attempt to request the language test again, because that would be a filter, but luckily it didn't work out. Luckily for us and for my clients and for the applicants. So we're good with that. We don't need Spanish at the moment. But yes, if the client is able to live in Argentina, I advise them to do so. If they can't, it's not a deal breaker. We still submit the applications, but we ask them to if they have holidays, to come to Argentina and try to be in Argentina as much as they can. Okay. And I think this was the last slide, but I just want to make sure, Denisa. Yeah, that's it. Are we good with the time?
Yes, perfect. Okay, that was great.
Okay, excellent.
So you're helping a lot of foreigners to secure residency there. Why do they want to move to Argentina? Or what attracts them to Argentina?
Okay, at the moment, in the past 3 years, I've been doing this for 20 years. So depending on the historical time, the reasons have been different. What I see now, what I'm able to read in my clients are two things. Number one, for example, with the new government, is a business-friendly government. They're very focused in attracting talent, in attracting investments. And for example, something that has been happening with the new government is that we receive a lot of requests for real estate purchases. We have a partner, Javier Paz, and he's full of requests for real estate transactions. We didn't have that in the past because there was no legal security, because we had a law for rental leases that was really detrimental to owners, property owners. That law was basically canceled by the new government. So now you can own property, you can rent it, you can adjust the price, the price can be in dollars for rentals. So there's the new government is more protective of property rights and landlords, basically. So one of the reasons that I see a lot of interest in Argentina at the moment has to do with that, with a friendly environment for business and also property and investments in general. The second thing has to do with more of a geopolitical situation. As you know, there are wars and conflicts happening around the world. And in the past 2 or 3 years, a lot of the intent to move in Argentina or have a second plan, because many people are not moving to Argentina, but they want to have a plan in place in the event that something happens. Because I live in Buenos Aires, I live in Argentina, but with the conversations I have with my clients that are from Europe or the States, they feel that geopolitically the world is not the same, and that there are threats, and that Argentina is far away from all the conflict areas, and that Argentina, we have water, we have food, and we are far away from conflict. So most clients, they perceive Argentina as a safe plan B in the event they need to activate a second home. And I think that motivation reserved or started in the past 3 years approximately. And with the wars around the world escalating instead of diminishing, we can see that motivation more and more when we have the interviews. So Argentina is attractive because we are far away from conflict. We have a lot of land, we have food, we have water, and I noticed that's an advantage and an attractive aspect for clients.
And the culture is very welcoming, and also the weather is very nice. So I guess both of these things also count. There's a huge trend in people moving out to Latin American countries for childbirth as an easy way to obtain citizenship. And we have Val, hi Val, who has recently gone through this in Argentina. Max, or anyways, there are other people who are thinking about this. So the question is, how does the citizenship process and the timeline change if a foreign couple has a baby in Argentina? And I would plus to this, is there any benefit at all that you have a couple instead of a single person applying for citizenship? Does it count in front of the judges?
So basically what I think the most important thing has to do with the intent to live in Argentina or not. Because I noticed, I like think about policies in general and immigration policies in general. And I noticed that, for example, the two main nationalities that are submitting citizenship applications are Venezuelans from Venezuela and Russian nationals. But the difference is that the Venezuelans, they live in Argentina. And many of our clients from Russia are remote applicants. So they submit the applications and they leave. And what I notice is that the immigration agency and also the courts are trying to prevent or avoid the remote applicant thing. But that was after it appears in the news and all that. The distinction between being a single mom or a couple, I don't think that I think that's the same. What they want to see is if you leave the country or not, because typically the lawyers, we ask you to leave a power of attorney, and that's how it worked a year and a half ago. But now the agency, what they're doing is like checking if you left right away after the approval. And then the court is going to check if, of course, we for every client needs to give us a power of attorney. So they want to see if you left or not. So it's not so much the bias is not on your nationality. It's more on whether you're a remote applicant or not. So the advice is if you are a remote worker, if you're a digital nomad, and you're able to stay in Argentina during the process, that's advisable. That's going to be in your benefits. That's going to make the process easier. So basically, going back to your original question, whether if for the judge, if it's a couple or if it's a single person, I don't think they base the decisions based on that. They make the decisions based on that. It's more whether you leave right away or not. I think that's what they're trying to detect and find out.
Okay, and that's valid in the case of childbirth on Argentinian territory, I suppose, right?
Yeah, because that's the typical example of remote applicants. Is you come, you give birth, and for example, if you give birth in Argentina, you submit your residency papers for permanent residency, and you leave, they're not going to approve them. And what I noticed is that sometimes they are delaying the applications in purpose, simply to see how long you can wait in the country. Because if you're working abroad, back home, I mean, you can stay for long. So sooner or later you leave. And I see that they play that game, that they wait in purpose simply to try to differentiate who is a remote applicant and who is living here. But if you manage to stay in Argentina for the required period, I think it's feasible, doable, and you get your approvals.
Okay. Sounds good. Dylan asks if you are helping also with the investor visa. Okay,
I do. I can help with the investor visa, but the situation is the following. The investor visa is much more complicated than the rentista visa. And for example, the investor visa, you still need to live in Argentina 6 months out of 12. You still get temporary residency for 1 year. I mean, the what you get from the investor visa is exactly the same as what you get from rentista. The difference is that the investor visa is much more complicated because the way it's legislated, the way it's enacted in the law is that you need the approval of the Secretary of Commerce, and you need to have a productive investment, that you need to employ people. So for most people, it's much easier to show $1,400 a month than a business plan that needs to be approved by an agency with everything that it involves. And even clients that have investments, they end up saying, no, I mean, it's much easier for me to show 1,400 than. So I'm able to legally help you with an investor residency application, but I'm not sure if that's what I'm going to advise you to get. I don't know if it's clear or.
Well, Dylan, if you have any follow-up questions, let us know.
Sure.
Big Mike asks, when one gets the citizen court date, how much notice do you get to give, I suppose, to the court? Do you, as in, I don't think do you need to give any notice to the court, right? When you get the, so I suppose the question is, when you apply for citizenship, there is a scheduled court date that you have to go and present yourself. I assume.
Okay.
No.
This is something convenient for the applicant. Typically, there are very few mandatory court appearances. So you have flexibility, and this is very important because most clients, most applicants, they have their own commitments in other countries. They need to travel. And the good thing is that they are able to accommodate and they have the flexibility to travel and complete some of the tasks whenever it's convenient for them. There's only one that is mandatory, and that's decided by the court. That's the day you swear in. That's assigned unilaterally by the court. They don't ask you, they don't say, hey, when are you available? It's like this. Today I have a court order that says you need to show up in court February 15th, and that's it. They don't ask you when you want to come. Or so typically in most cases you always get a 30 days notice. So we know 30 days in advance, and we tell the client, okay, be ready to be here on February 15th. That's like the only mandatory date, because all the rest of the appearances that you need to show up and come and meet with us and go to complete the different, they don't have a mandatory date that you need to appear. So you can flexibly work your schedule, let us know, and you visit when it's convenient for you.
Okay, so it's minimum 30 days. You'll have time. You have plenty of notice to.
You have time to plan. Yeah, in my experience, there are like 12 courts, and they always give you at least 30 days in most cases.
Okay. Well, I want to return back to the residency process, unless somebody has another question in the meantime. So you said that in order to apply for permanent residency, we apply directly for permanent residency, right? It's not, or you call it temporary. Is there any? No,
it's temporary. No, the only way you can apply for. So the situation is like this. So you have 1 year of temporary, a second year of temporary. And with the temporary, we apply for citizenship. We don't wait for permanent. And this question comes up a lot, and people say, "Oh, I need to wait for my permanent." And I know that some lawyers say this, but I've been practicing since 2001, and I've always got granted citizenship with temporary residency. So I know this as a fact. That we do the 2 years of temporary residency, and boom, we submit the application for citizenship. I don't wait for permanent, to be honest with you. It has to do with strategy as well, because I heard some other lawyers saying that you need to wait for permanent, but I haven't, and I've proven myself 100% success rate with doing the things the way I described.
Well, that's good. And for example, if I keep my temporary residency for 2 years and I have a gap, and then I'm not eligible, then I have to take the whole process all over again in order to apply for citizenship, right? So you need to have uninterrupted.
Theoretically, it needs to be continuous, but many things are case by case, on a case by case basis. And do you remember I explained that 50% of aspects can be planned, and they are in the regulation, but there's a 50% that has to do with standards in each court, with each secretary. So there have been many instances where we've been able to make things happen. We've been successful, and all of a sudden the client had an interruption, or the client lived 2 years and left for a year. And so this is not mathematical, because at the moment the regulation is not so specific about things, so that gives some room for flexibility, and it will depend on the court criteria, but it's more on a case-by-case basis. If I speak with a client that has an interruption, my advice would be to give it a try, to go for it, although it's not 100% guaranteed, but I would still give it a try.
Okay. And in terms of documentation to apply, you said that the documents need to be apostilled. So I assume it's birth certificate, marriage certificate, and I guess the criminal records, right?
Criminal records, and all the evidence related to the income.
And all the evidence.
Bylaws, bank statements, everything. The income certification by the certified public accountant, the bylaws or articles of incorporation of your company, your rental agreement, your deed from the property you own, everything. Each of them need. Go ahead.
But if you have, for example, an employment contract as a digital nomad, does the contract of the employment, does it count or not so much?
No, because that's not considered passive income, and you're going to be eligible for a digital nomad visa, but not for rentista. Sometimes what we do, we have a client that says, okay, I want to start accumulating the 2 years, but at the moment I cannot apply for rentista. They can start as a digital nomad. That's going to buy us time for 1 year. So we use that strategy. We get a 1 year, but then the second year we need to try to find a way to get the rentista. Sometimes the client themselves, they say, okay, I would like to start right away. I don't want to wait, because to prepare a rentista, it's going to take me some time. I need to incorporate the company in Delaware. I need to, you need to do some setup. So sometimes we use the digital nomad for 1 year, but then we need to switch, because the digital nomad is salary. You make a salary in payroll, independent contractor. And the idea of rentista is that you're not earning a salary, is that you're earning passive income.
And I guess that there is no option to prove that you have a big lump sum that you transfer it in a local bank account.
The big lump sum was introduced last year. We started using it in July. It's my least favorite option, because the agency has a lot of second thoughts about them. They froze all the applications for 90 days. So they're questioning that strategy. So whenever the client has a possibility of showing passive income and not savings, because basically what you're describing is liquid assets in an account, that's savings. The savings is the one that we're using, but with big disclaimers, explaining the client that it could be that at the moment they are approving them, we had to push a lot. But if you have passive income with dividends or rental income, that's more desirable.
Okay, noted. Max here asks a follow-up question. So there is no faster processing if you have a baby and get married, and if somebody plans for this and stays 6 months in Argentina, do you get permanent residency directly? I suppose with no proof of passive income.
So in the Citizenship Act, there's a waiver of the 2-year residency requirement for those who give birth or get married to an Argentine. So the only difference in the process of naturalization, of acquiring the citizenship for someone who gave birth against someone who has a rentista and is living in Argentina, is that we do not need to wait 2 years to submit the petition of citizenship. You get a waiver on the 2 years residency requirement. So,
but you still have to prove the passive income, or that's not a requirement?
So typically the way it would work, if you gave birth in Argentina, we wouldn't be using the rentista, because when you have an Argentine children, you can get permanent residency directly, because it's a family-based petition. So you get the permanent residency and you apply for citizenship at the same time. So you're going to have to show the court how you sustain yourself, but the strategy of the rentista itself, you're not going to use. You're not going to use that category. You're going to get permanent residency at Migraciones and then citizenship in the court. And so you're not going to apply for rentista. You're going to apply for a family-based petition because you have an Argentine son.
Okay.
Am I being clear?
Yes. So it is an easier process, I suppose, for whoever there.
It's easier because you're mainly because you don't need to wait for the 2 years. That's very important already. Mm-hmm. And secondly, because you can apply for permanent. They visit you. They do, we call it social services, and they go and check where the baby lives, and they check the accommodation, the housing, and they ask you what you live from. But yes, it's much easier. You don't need to open a bank account. You don't need to transfer the money. So it's easier, but at the same time, because it's a scheme that it's been repeatedly being used, they are more attentive. For example, they check the address. They check your address. They go there to see if you live there. If you're a rentista, they never check your address. So some things are easier, but some others are enforced more strictly.
Noted. There was a question about importing pets and whether that's difficult or what's the paperwork, but I see Val answered from his own experience that this is relatively easy. No?
So I've never heard about lawyers getting involved in those aspects, and taking that into account, it probably means that it's easy because you never need so it should be really easy. You have the normal things that you need to enter the country with your pets, like when you visit a country for tourism. So you probably need the same. It shouldn't be complicated at all, and you probably don't need any assistance from third parties.
Okay, noted. Regarding tax implications for the passive income, I understand that there's a territorial tax system, so you're only taxed on whatever you're earning on Argentine territory, and that applies even to the money that you are transferring, the 2,000 per month, the minimum requirement. You're not taxed on those amounts.
Okay, taxation is very interesting, and we have a loophole here that we are happy to share with the Mavericks community. And this loophole, it's working so far, and we're hoping it's not gonna change. We call this the more than 6, less than 9. So you need to live in Argentina more than 6 months a year to be eligible for residency and be eligible for citizenship. But you need to live in Argentina less than 9 months a year not to trigger tax residency. So if you live in Argentina more than 6, but less than 9, you get the best of immigration and taxation, because you do not become a tax resident, but you get all the immigration benefits, and you can even apply for citizenship. So I think that's magnificent. That's incredible. So as long as you don't live in Argentina more than 9, but you do need to live more than 6, you're going to be fine. You're not going to be a tax resident for tax purposes. Okay, so the worldwide income and all that is not going to trigger. Yeah, I'm keeping my fingers crossed that this is not going to change, because when 20 years doing this, all the loopholes we had, the minute a lot of people started using them, they started closing them. So in the past, we used to get a passport. I used to go to the courts and get the passport in 7 months. It was fast, it was fairly easy, and things changed radically. So at least for the taxation aspect of things, I don't write articles about it, because I fear that someone is going to read it, because that's how really policies are made. Like, someone reads about it, and then it's someone that works at the agency, and then they change it. So I'm very fearful of that changing. I don't want it to change, because it's very advantageous for all of our clients.
Fingers crossed for that. Leanne asks if the taxation regime changes in case you're a citizen. Once you're a citizen, the same rule applies?
It does. It does. If you live in Argentina more than 90 days a year, you become a tax resident. So the most common thing is that once clients get their passports, they know they only have holidays up to 90 days in Argentina, if they want to be really like strict with compliance.
Okay, then let me ask you something. If you're coming back to the childbirth thing again, if you have a child that has a passport, Argentinian passport, but as parents, you don't opt to get the citizenship. How does this, you can apply any time for citizenship, even when the child is of mature age, it doesn't matter?
Yes, it doesn't matter. That's correct.
But then when the child turns 18 years old, and if he spends more than 3 months per year in Argentina, then that means that he will be liable for tax?
Yeah, but typically, depending on the case, of course, I know there are many wealthy 18 years old, but in general, people is not that much concerned about minors and students, because in the generality, they don't have that many assets, or typically is whether, structured in trust or their parents. So in my experience in the past 20 years, for kids being born in Argentina, it is true that if in the future they decide to return to Argentina and live more than 90 days a year, they will become tax residents. But I haven't experienced that's a concern for most parents, because when they are young or children, they normally don't have income, and when they are adults, I haven't followed up with I've been practicing for 20 years. So the ones that have been born during the past 20 years, they are turning 20 now, but I haven't perceived that as a concern for parents. But it's true. If you're an Argentine citizen and you live in Argentina more than 90 days a year, you become a tax resident. That's accurate.
That's an interesting thing to consider, because I understand that you cannot legally give up your Argentinian citizenship. Mm-hmm. So once you got it, you're stuck with it for life. Yeah. And I think that's an important caveat. I don't know why, and what's the context behind that. Do you know when the legislation first made this?
So what happens is that there are 3 types of Argentine citizens. One type is Argentine born. And the case law has repeatedly said that you cannot renounce the citizenship. And but then for naturalized citizens, there's case law that allows them to renounce. So, but it's different. Argentine born and naturalized. And our legislations for citizenship are very old. Are from 1869, are 1869. It's very old. Mm. So we practitioners, we're expecting an update and a new law, and there are rumors about it. But so far, we are with the old law, with the 2 years. Everything is being applied like that at the moment so far. But there are rumors about this being too lenient, too flexible, too easy, and that there's going to be a new Citizenship Act. But those are rumors. There's nothing concrete.
Great. Peter, you want to say something?
Yeah. So hi Gabe, good to see you again. So this in general, this in general goes back to the reason why we practice 5 flags. And so even when you've got that citizenship, yes, you are technically you're technically an Argentine taxpayer if you're there 91 or more or 90 plus days once you get the citizenship. However, this is no different than if you've got an Australian passport or a U.S. passport or any of these other 5 eyes passports, and you're in Argentina. Especially the U.S. where they're taxing on global income already. This is why we're setting up our investment vehicles where you're not the UBO, the ultimate beneficial owner, in jurisdictions that are zero tax. So this is precisely why we saw last year in terms of Mavericks. Holy crap. We see such a need here that so many of our Mavs aren't really seeing, and consequently, let's set up in conjunction with getting these CBIs or whatever, doing it with time like Gabe is doing so masterfully. Let's make sure that we're setting up our investment vehicles that are in places where, again, money goes where it's treated best. So let's set up our investment vehicles in IBCs, in tax free for all practical purposes jurisdictions, with the UBO where we're not the UBO. We're not the ultimate beneficial owner. That's why we set up these trusts in these jurisdictions. So if you guys have questions about this is why Chris and Andrew and I spun up Sullivan Hart within the Mavericks protocol. We can have 5 passports. We can live where we want to, and we don't have to worry about, holy crap, now I've got to worry about being an Argentine taxpayer because I've got an Argentine citizenship and I want to be there 6 months out of the year. So it resolves that problem. So anyway, I'll get off my bandstand. You guys hear me talk about this enough. But for those of you that are getting this passport, don't worry. As long as you've got your 5 flags set up, it's still not an issue. All right. I'll shut up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the clarification, Peter. All right.
Thank you, Peter.
Val has another question. Can adult first-degree relatives of naturalized citizens avoid the 2-year wait as well when they apply for citizenship?
No. Let me check, Val. Can adult first-degree relatives of naturalized citizens? No, because they need to be Argentine born. I feel that that's unfair, actually. So I'm willing to try because that's unconstitutional, because there are already, the court is going to say no, but I think it's worth it to fight it, because there's case law that says that there cannot be 2 different types of Argentines, naturalized Argentines and an Argentine born, as if the naturalized ones were second-class Argentines. There's case law about that, and I tried it with a different case that is citizenship by option, and I won every time. So the first answer is no. You're not waived the 2 years, but I would give it a try and ask that to be unconstitutional, and it might go well.
Okay, I hope that answered your question, Val. All right. Well, there are no other questions in the chat, so if nobody wants to comment or ask any last questions, we can wrap this off.
Denisa, thank you. I'm going to be answering courtesy emails. Simply make sure that if you send me an email, say that you attended the webinar, that you're from Mavericks, so that we can identify you, and we will reply as courtesy any follow-up that you have to this video and this presentation, okay?
Yes. So just for everybody to note, I shared my screen with the email of Gabriel, where Gabriel can be reached out. I think, Gabriel, before I let you go, I wanted to ask a quick question on rough cost estimate to go through the whole process, not with the childbirth, but with the process that you've just discussed about. Doesn't have to be precise, but a rough estimate so people have an idea about this.
Roughly, you need to calculate between 3,000 and 3,500, and for citizenship between 5,000 and 6,000. That's roughly. That's it. One is citizenship, the other one is residency, US dollars.
So around 10,000 to get you through the whole process of citizenship and
correct
residency.
Everything.
All right. Exactly. Great. Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to speak with you again, and I'm sure we will be in touch soon.
Thank you so much. Until next time. Thank you, Denisa. Thank you all.
Thank you.